Hello, good evening, and welcome back. No deal Brexit risk may have already pushed UK into recession, says the National Institute for Economic and Social Research. Leaving without deal will throw concrete in wheels of British EU trade, says economist. They don't understand concrete, because if the wheels are turning, concrete ain't gonna set, in which case it's cement. This is from The Guardian, Monday 22nd July. 2:44 British summertime, so in fact, exactly 9 hours ago. And I use The Guardian. I know they've been advertised a lot, which is good because that suggests they're failing, which we can only hope that will continue to happen. But I use them because I disagree with them vehemently, and therefore they're going to bring up everything that I don't like, and I can just prove it quite easily because, hey, they're failing and there's a reason for it. So the mounting risk of a no-deal Brexit may have already pushed the UK economy into a recession already. One of the country's foremost economic forecasters has warned. Yes, and GDP, I don't know, as Sargon Ricard says, fuck GDP, because let's be honest, I mean, it's like, has been said by Michael Caine, that I would rather be a poor man in charge of my own destiny than a rich man's slave. And that's what it comes to when you're talking about national sovereignty and being able to decide your own rules. Although, as Mark Twain said, if democracy did anything, then it wouldn't be allowed. Or if voting did anything, it wouldn't be allowed. And I think it was Winston Churchill who said that once every 4 years, people are allowed to vote, and for the rest of the time they're a slave. I do understand those arguments, but in retaliation to that I would say, well, why would you allow Brexit to happen? Why would you allow Donald Trump to be elected? And why would you allow the Brexit party to surge this much? It doesn't make a lot of sense to me, unless you want to be that black pill. Then fair enough, let me know in the comments below how I'm wrong. But considering the thought of fuck GDP from Sargon Ricard, that he has mentioned quite rightly that, at least in construction work, the salary is just under £50,000 a year, and the reason being that people from Eastern Europe in particular, and from Poland, and as we all know a few years ago, that people were afraid of Polish people taking the British workers' jobs, that now they're going back because there isn't enough money for them anymore, which means it's now a seller's market, and that the UK citizens can actually receive this money that, because they are actually receiving these jobs. But let's read on. Sounding the alarm before the expected elevation of Boris Johnson to Downing Street this week, the National Institute of Economic and Social Research, NIESR, said there was a 1 in 4 chance the country is in a recession. Currently, they're saying it's down 0.1%. Against the backdrop of renewed uncertainty and the increasing likelihood of a no-deal Brexit under Johnson premiership, growth has stalled in recent months, business investment has faltered, and the pound has fallen sharply. This is down to, with America, it's $1.15. I think it'd be down to $1.10. But providing that we actually get Boris Johnson in, which he should be, then that is fine, considering Donald Trump is actually quite a fan. And you might say it's borderline nepotism. It isn't a family run, I understand. But nonetheless, that considering Donald Trump actually has a favourability of the United Kingdom, you could say it's back to his Scottish roots, and with the golf courses that he still has in Scotland, although of course he's put off the businesses to other people because he doesn't want to be said that it's any sort of corruption. The same thing as anybody who stays in his hotels from abroad, that goes straight into the tax fund and he doesn't receive a penny of it because he doesn't want to be caught out at all. He's doing everything above board. And again, Sticks and Hammer 666 has made a great video of saying, well, anything that you think that Trump has done that is racist, we can disprove that quite easily and readily, and I will put a link in the description if you wish to check that out for disproving any racism allegations. But my main point here is that I don't think it's Project Fear, which places like the Daily Express have posed as an explanation for this, to say this won't happen and it's just them trying to make everybody feel bad, in which case we can have a people's vote, which is let's have a second referendum, let's just keep voting until we get the response we want. And the point is that actually the people who are responsible for the main businesses, considering that this seems to be more concentrated into some central conglomerates which are international and multinational, that they don't care about who they employ, they just want the labour where it's cheapest, and they care about the politicians that they can bribe. And the larger the governments are, so if you have the Congress controlling all of Northern America, if you have the President of Russia controlling all of Russia, same thing with the Communist Party in China, and also with the European Union, if that's Merkel or Juncker or whoever wishes to drunkenly stand unopposed there. And you can say the delirium tremors are setting in, considering that they have to be carried off stage sometime, particularly Angela Merkel and Juncker. That they're going to be really annoyed if the UK leaves, because then that means there are going to be more people they have to bribe, and they're going to wish to try and move it elsewhere. It's like in America in the Roosevelt years, I believe, that they had a 10,000 or 11,000 page tax detail, and the first 2 pages were actually saying what it was, and that's when you had up to 90% tax for income. The rest of the pages after the first 2, whether that's 10,000 or 11,000, were just exceptions to the rule because of the amount of lobbying that had been done. If you can find favours in Parliament, considering politicians get paid what they do, and some would say they get paid too much, but then the counter-argument to that is, well, then they're going to accept bribes in order to be corrupt, is that then exceptions are going to be permitted because then they're going to make the money. And you can see that very clearly in anybody who has been President of America. For example, the amount of money they receive for speaking fees afterwards is absurd. And then how can you have a £400,000 a year job and then leave as a multi-millionaire, if not dozens of millions? It doesn't quite make sense. And the same with politicians who receive less than that. They receive, I think it's $120,000 a year, that they can also leave as a multi-millionaire after just a few years. That suggests that they're doing some off-the-books dealings. Trump, however, having a net worth of, I believe, about $7 billion US, he said all that he earns is going back into the tax fund. His $400,000 a year, he doesn't care about it. He's putting that back into the tax fund. He is not receiving a salary at all as President of the United States. So, some economists believe the UK economy contracted in the 3 months to June, marking the first negative quarter in 7 years. As a consequence of factory closures planned to avert any potential disruption around the original 29th of March Brexit deadline, official growth figures for the second quarter are due to be published next month, and the thinking is going to get worse and worse and worse. They say that there's a 25% chance the GDP declines again in the third quarter. However, the think tank central forecast is for growth of 0.2% in the third quarter, because it's only a quarter chance that it's going to drop. But as I say, I think this is all intentional. I don't think it's going to be Project Fear. It's basically saying, hey, here's what we want to happen, here's what is going to happen, so this is going to happen because we control the money, we control the power. The short-term outlook for the UK economy is very murky indeed, with a significant risk that a severe economic downturn will begin within the next 6 months, the National Institute for Economics and Social Research said. Warning the risk of leaving without a deal was rising, with less than 6 months left before the next Prime Minister runs out of time to renegotiate a deal with Brussels. NISAR said the country risked an even more severe downturn in autumn, is that economic growth over the long run could be damaged by about 5% a year. I don't think this is really going to be a problem. If you have individuals receiving more money, they're then going to be more motivated because they think that actually their country cares for them and maybe their government actually cares for them instead of outsourcing all this labour, in which case people are going to be working harder because they're going to think that they're actually being taken care of. It's like in America again with, I think it's Cory Booker and Buttigieg, is it? I'm not sure. It's definitely Cory Booker. It could be Castro, yeah, Julian Castro. That both of them have gone to Mexico in order to campaign. I said, well, what the hell are you doing in Mexico to campaign when it's the American presidency you want to get? We've agreed, at least at the moment, that it's only US citizens who can get a vote, so why are you in Mexico? That kind of has your true colours showing. You've really jumped the shark on this, as Tim Pool would say. Jagid Chadha, I apologise for not saying your name correctly, director of the think tank, which is Britain's longest established independent research institute, How Independent Are You?, said a no-deal Brexit would in effect throw concrete in the wheel to British trade with the EU at a moment when the UK is already fragile and vulnerable from a slowdown in growth. Well, not if you actually take help where you can get it and stop punching out like Theresa May did, but someone like Boris Johnson, who has a good relationship with Donald Trump, should be doing better. It's like, if he plays his cards right, then he could get Nigel Farage as Foreign Secretary. Farage probably won't accept that because he still wants to run his own Brexit party, which, again, isn't that much of a party compared to other people. It doesn't have members, it's just the subscribers. But nonetheless, if he could make that happen, then he'll definitely be more favourable from Donald Trump. And Donald Trump is clearly going to win in 2020, considering the entire mess that the Democrats are, they're flailing around and failing in essence. So he's clearly going to get it, in which case if we can have somebody that is favourable to him, as borderline corrupt as you may think it is, then it's clearly going to be better for the UK economy, and a trade deal with the US would definitely be better. But talking about UK-US relations, they say here, Acknowledging that the UK crashing out without a deal on 31st of October was becoming increasingly likely, the think tank warned the pound could plunge by about 10% against the US dollar to about $1.10. Inflation would then likely surge to about 4% as the price of importing goods to Britain rises, the highest level in almost 8 years and more than double the Bank of England's target of 2%. Of course, if we get control of our fishing waters, then we can take care of our people more so with at least the bare necessities. But there is also another way out of it, as suspect as it might be, which is bartering on a national level. This was most successfully done by Adolf Hitler after the Treaty of Versailles, considering, especially with the Ruhr, that the amount of reparations they would have to pay would be equivalent to $100 trillion in today's money, that was clearly far too much, that he decided bartering was a better outcome, that is still possible in today's day and age. Just because it was a tactic done by someone who was very unfavourable, someone who was largely agreed upon as evil, it doesn't mean that his tactic in itself is a bad thing. So we'll just follow up here, saying there is no palpable growth for some years to come following a no-deal Brexit. Yes, but that's either fear-mongering or you're mentioning what your corporate overlords want you to say. Public borrowing as percentage of gross domestic product could balloon from the current level of 1.2% of GDP to about 3.8% by 2022 under such a scenario. The Tories have pledged to keep borrowing below 2% by that time. And that is the thing that concerns me, that the Conservatives don't seem to be conserving anything. And if you're a failing party, then you can't predict or accept that you're going to stay in power because, hey, you're failing. And Johnson said a similar thing in regards to Brexit, that if they're not going to deliver on that, then we might as well admit the defeat of the Conservative Party as a whole and it's going to be replaced by something else. Which, to be honest, at this point, doesn't seem like all that much of a bad thing. But, as always, let me know what you guys think below. Do you think this is Project Fear, it's fear-mongering? Do you think it's a prediction because they actually know what's going to happen, because their corporate overlords are deciding what the outcome is going to be? Do you think that, again, the polls are wrong? Do you think GDP actually matters? And do you think we'll be fine considering the relationship between Johnson and Trump, and that Trump is actually favourable to his British brethren and favourable of people in the Anglosphere? Let me know, I'm always intrigued. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.